Hi friends, welcome to the Very Occasional Podcast with Morgan Quaid. Now with 30% more podcast and 20% less occasional. This episode features Nate Weber, an ex-Navy corpsman, helicopter instructor, homesteader, and a lone survivalist. We talk to Nate about his time in the armed forces, his experiences on Alone, and we come up with a truly ingenious reality TV pitch called Trash Pandas. Before we get on to the show, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast, because if I can get the channel to 1,000 subscribers, my survival instructor is going to send me a sleeping bag with my face sewn on it. Welcome to the Very Occasional Podcast with Morgan Quaid. I'm joined today by Nate Weber, ex-Navy corpsman, helicopter instructor, homesteader, and a lone survivalist. Nate, welcome to the Very Occasional Podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm super happy to have you here because I've recently become a fan of the Alone series and have been progressively sort of watching it all, and my family has been getting involved as well. So as very suburban, comfortable people, it's a really interesting thing to watch. But in particular, I really liked your approach to the whole thing, which we'll get into in a little bit. But let's maybe start with your earlier career. So you've had a long history with the Navy and the Army. How did that start out for you when you were a young buck?
I was in high school. I was in competitive sports, a wrestler and a football player. So the military was always an option, but I never really thought it would be my number one. I was a junior in high school, and I got an offer to scholarship to the Naval Academy to wrestle or to come visit and potentially go. And I kind of laughed it off because I still had a whole year left of wrestling to compete, so I didn't even respond. And then Ohio State's a real competitive state, so in wrestling I got second my senior year at the state level and no offers for any scholarships. So 2 days after graduating high school, I was in the Navy. I was 17, and I chose medicine because I wanted to go to medical school eventually. And so I chose the Navy corpsman to get the experience in the hospitals and medicine and build my knowledge base. So that's really how it started. It was just get out of a small town and go see the world. So it was an easy decision.
And what was it? What was it like that the first? Because a lot of us that aren't involved in the military, our only experience is through film and TV and that sort of stuff. Which is probably not 100% accurate. So what was it like for you moving from normal sort of suburban life or life into the rigor and the repetitive nature of?
Yeah, I don't think the Navy was anything that was demanding physically. There was challenges that I could do and jobs that I could take on, but it wasn't a big deal for me. It was just a fun experience to kind of find myself in my late teens and early 20s and figure out who I'm going to be and how I'm going to be, and a lot of discovery and lots of failures. And but I mean, it wasn't the whole transition. It was good. I love the discipline. I love the regimented routine, and I learned to really enjoy medicine and trying to be the smartest or the best I could be and continue to improve my skill sets there. So the first 12 years they kind of just flew by.
Wow.
And then I had 2 children along the way and got married and then tried to switch to the Army, the flight program. And that's, I got picked up for that in 2005. And after that, had 3 more children with my wife, and the rest is history. So, but yeah, it wasn't a big transition. I didn't come from like, the nuclear family where your mom and dad and everybody's happy and, you live in urbans. No, we rented houses, lived country, barefoot, single mom. The 70s were normal for my family, I would say, as Drugs coming out of the 60s were still pretty heavy, big parties.
Right.
Um, so that's what my exposure was growing up as a small child, was that type of culture. It was just poor white American kid and single family, single mom, through high school. So it wasn't that I had it wasn't easy. It was my challenge. So, but in comparison, it's tougher than some and easier than others. So, the military wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big, I would say it was an improvement. The transition was easy. Hi, this is Nate Weber. You're listening to the Very Occasional Podcast. Please like and subscribe, or I may just find you in the night.
And what was some of or one of the things that you picked up during the years in the military? That because one of the things I was impressed with on loan when you appeared was just your attitude to problem solving and I'll take it as it comes and all that sort of stuff. What are some of the things that you picked up from the military that have helped sort of prepare you for that sort of experience?
So I think being in the military was it's such an interesting dynamic if you have the right approach to it. So, and what I learned early on is that because there's so many different people from all walks of life that join the military, and what you learn is, where is there a will? Like, how is hard work taught? How is there a will to push forward and challenge oneself? And most of the time, in my experiences, nobody was willing to step above and beyond. They were all so there was a rule I kind of learned and I pass on to my kids is anytime you take on a new job, the only thing you have to be concerned about is being better than the person on your right and the person on your left. If you can find yourself in that position and you always paying attention and just make sure that you're doing the right thing and you're better than those two, then you're gonna be successful. You're gonna make mistakes, but you're gonna be successful. And what I noticed is people didn't want to do the hard stuff.
Yeah,
people avoided the difficult stuff. So I kind of changed my mindset and thought, I want it. Like, that's what makes me happy is the hard stuff. So I never shied away from it. And what that did was I gained so much more experience because I would be the go-to. All doctors or whoever needed something, they knew they could ask me, and I would absolutely, no matter how horrible the procedure or whatever it would be, I would always say yes and be enthusiastic about it. Because I thought the only way that I was actually going to gain or learn was through experience. No matter how bad that experience was, I was going to do it. So that's my approach. And I learned that, and I kept it. I kind of grew that idea into the rest of my life when I was flying or teaching or whatever it may be in combat. It was just it's just an easy approach. Like, I stayed calm and I was never discouraged. Like, for me, the rain or bad weather is pleasing. Everything is opposite.
Right.
Normally upset somebody, I find no discourse in it. I actually don't enjoy lazy normal. I want struggle. I thrive on struggle. So problem solving was part of that. It just kind of came along with it. That was the challenge I accepted. So
yeah,
if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense for your time on loan and your approach. And again, that was one of the things that. So cue the music. This is the blowing wind up your skirt section. I loved watching you on the show, partly because it was such a different approach, and you seemed to be all about the challenge and throw things at me, like you say, to make weather can be as bad as you want. Any sort of challenge, that's fine. That's what I'm here for, the challenge,
right.
Which just seemed a little bit different to some of the other people. And the thing that impressed me the most was when you finished. That to me was the most impressive thing, because I've seen so many contestants get to that point where you can see they're going to have to drag me out. So I'm withering away. I'm potentially doing damage to my body, but right. I'm not going to leave. And I love the fact that you got to the point where it was like, okay, this is this is going to start hurting my body and the future and all that sort of stuff, I'm out. I really admired that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The day that I left, I never intended to leave that day. Um, it started raining on day 22, and it held solid for 2 straight days. So I just stayed in my shelter, and because I was in my shelter, I did a full body examination. I really laid there and thought about the situation. So I knew how much fat I had lost. I knew what I had left. And in my experience, again, it paid dividends for me because I know my body. I know every inch of it. I know how it functions. I know when something's wrong and what my symptoms are. Because as a wrestler, I'd go, 4 or 5 days without food. I'd fast for 4 days and until wrestling. And that's with 2 hours of heavy working out, 3 hours every day working out during the week to get in shape. So with no food or water, I knew how far I could push my body. So again, those are struggles, but that's experience. And I did a self-assessment. I knew that I wasn't perfusing my feet. They were cold and I was in a sleeping bag. My body heat should have been keeping my feet, and I was laying flat. So I knew that my circulatory system wasn't perfusing my 2 toes on the outer edge of my feet. So I was losing feeling, and then I woke up day 24 with a headache and I felt nauseous. So I knew that I had switched over to just burning, no more fat left. Whatever fat I did have was visceral or was organ fat, and I was going to hold on to it as a last resort. So I started burning muscle, and I got nauseous, and that's common for me in that state. So, but all I did on that day was call to tell them that my health had changed, because that was a normal health check. You're supposed to notify them when a change in your health happens, and we were supposed to get our med checks that day or the next day. And it took me a little while to get them on the phone, and then when I did, I had realized, because the last 2 days I knew my predicament. I'm real stubborn when it comes to that. So I kind of thought I had, 3 personalities out there. I'm very optimistic. Um, but I'm also very practical optimistic. Like there's that shadow in there is there that says, hey, be reasonable. I know we have this good outlook and we're going to continue to fight. And then stubborn comes in, and it's always optimistic and stubborn that stick together. So, the logic based guy that's like, hey, we're practical. It's probably we should go. And that was day 22. He's crying. He's like, listen, you got to go. There's nothing left. There's no food here. You're on a glacier melt gravel pit. There's no ground dwelling animals. There's no rabbits burrowing anywhere because they can't dig in this, because I couldn't dig in it. So I knew I should have left. And then when you get to that point, I have other responsibilities in this world. And this struggle was enough for me. And I knew the future. There's no way I was going to compete with Biko unless Biko injured himself, because he went into it with 110 pounds of extra energy. So I knew that going in, that if he just hung out, he was going to stomp me at 50 days unless I had food. So practical, that's me, practical, and then stubborn. So when I called him, I was just telling him I had health change. And then he's like, is anything else good? And I was like, no, I'm done. So it had been a well thought out decision. I'm just not in the business of damaging long-term my body. I've worked hard to keep it healthy and make it strong, and I've failed a lot of times. It damaged it doing too much or whatever. So I knew the limit, and it wasn't an issue. It wasn't a hard decision. I was more disappointed that there wasn't more opportunity in my first 24 days. Like I made a couple big mistakes, and in hindsight, I probably would have made a landing net on day 1 and had it ready, available, because I lost that fish. And so, I mean, those kind of in hindsight, but still, I knew that was my only source. And the colder it got, the fish were going to leave. That's why I built the pier. I knew I had to get further out to catch them. And then as it ices over or gets cold, I was going to lose the fish. So I wasn't in a place to catch anything that was land based. So decision.
So a question that I'm guessing a lot of people have, and you've probably been asked a gazillion times, after the initial pickup and all of that sort of stuff, first meal you sat down to, what was that meal?
The show is very this is where we had conflict, but I signed an agreement, so I have to follow the show's dietitian, whatever it may be, and I do believe I have a little bit more knowledge of being an adult for 30 plus years that I know my body and I know what I could do. So it was bone broth for a few days. I think freer at recovery than I was on the show. And the irony of it is this is my disagreement, and it's fine. I voiced it very openly during my refeed. Had I stayed and caught a 40-pound trout, I could have eaten the whole thing and nobody cared on day 24. But on day 24 in recovery, I'm only allowed to sip on a cup of bone broth every day for 4 days. So I felt at one point I had made a fishing pole that during like day 18, I was building a really nice rod and reel set to go fish so I could cast while I was out there. And there's where we were recovering. It was right on the river, and there's bears out there catching salmon and trout. So I was going to go fishing, start a fire and cook a fish because I was so hungry in recovery. But I give them credit. They think they understand, or their dietitian they hire thinks they understand refeeding syndrome, but it's unfortunate that they don't. So, and that's my opinion. I'm just telling you from my personal knowledge base that I know what refeeding syndrome does, and you should probably avoid carbohydrates, and they don't. So whatever.
There you go. Wow, a look behind the curtain, ladies and gentlemen.
Unveil it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that is fascinating because, of course, the way they edit the show and everything, you're with people as they're dreaming about burgers and T-bone steaks and all this sort of stuff, and you're thinking, oh, how soon after they finish are they going to be able to get in front of that food, and how much weight would they put on, 2 months down the track, from the and that was something that, and again, I don't want to, it's a great show. I love it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I do wonder how many people have lasting psychological impacts from, effectively starvation,
Sure.
hypothermia, all that sort of stuff.
Well, I think, that leads into that's a big issue with today, PTSD or post-traumatic stress. And I'm an advocate for understanding the trauma. So for me, I don't experience post-traumatic stress. In fact, it's probably the opposite of whatever you want to call it, because I chose to be in that place. I made a decision, and I've always had that opportunity to say, I don't want to do this anymore. But in the military, when people experience post-traumatic stress, to me, the argument would be the only people in our history that can claim true post-traumatic stress would be those that didn't choose to go. So the Vietnam draft was the last time that we forced people to go against their will and join the military and then have to go fight for our country. So when you choose to join the military, I'm almost certain everyone has had a history lesson of what our military does, or should do. And if you made that choice, and this is just a personal accountability philosophy, is I can never be angry at someone else for causing any struggle that I have to experience if I made a decision to put me in that position. It's just personal accountability. And so for the refeed or the hunger or losing 24 pounds or 35 pounds or in 24 days, that's on me. Like, I made that conscious choice to put myself into a struggle, a potential struggle, and then try to succeed in and where I failed, but it's my choice. So It's not it's not anybody else's. So I don't suffer, and I know people do, and I understand that trauma, but maybe they'll hear this and realize just making a choice that and accepting that it was your decision. It does change the whole approach. So the trauma, I guess.
Okay, so we're moving now to the next section of the show, which is called the worst pit. So this is where you and I both come up with a truly terrible idea for a film, TV, book, anything like that.
Can it be like a reality series, kind of like Alone?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything. I would suggest not something that actually exists, though, because, we don't want to get sued. But, but anything you want, and I'm happy to go first, or you can go first, whichever you would prefer.
I'll listen.
All right, okay. Remember, this is something that would probably never get made. A terrible idea. Alone theme, so I'm going to go with Alone. So it's a show kind of like that. People, on a survivalist challenge on their own. There's one particular gentleman who is on his own, really struggling. It gets to day 30 or something like that. He's desperate for fish, and he starts to have a little bit of luck with the fish. But he pulls in this strange looking orangey, almost like a goldfish type thing, and he eats it. Feels a little bit weird. He doesn't recognize the fish. The little note that comes up at the side of the thing saying this fish has X amount of protein in it.
Sure.
It doesn't have anything. Just there's no information. It's just a fish. So he eats that, and he feels a little bit strange, but he's got a little bit of energy. So the next day he finds another one of those fish, and he keeps finding this same type of fish. He can't find anything else. There's no land animals that he can trap. It's just this fish, but it's keeping him alive. But then he starts to notice that his skin starts to go a little bit funny, and then a little bit scaly, and a little bit strange. His vision starts to get a bit watery. He has a hankering to get into the water, but he knows it's freezing cold. He can't do that. The guy becomes a fish, basically. He becomes the fish that he's fishing, and then just jumps in the ocean, and then that's it.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. And the first 10, that's the first 10 minutes of the movie. It's a feature length movie. That's the first 10 minutes. And then at the 10th minute, he's almost fully a fish. He waddles over, he jumps into the ocean, and then the whole rest of the 90 minutes is just him as a fish, just swimming around. That's all. Doing fish stuff. Terrible idea.
Yeah. Does he if he's caught and eaten, does it spread? Is he other people?
See, now you're making it interesting, because it could be that is what all of the other goldfish are. They are previous people. Yeah.
I would need an origin story later.
Yeah.
A first fish. What?
The first fish.
Yeah.
Well, there's your title, The First Fish. There we go. I like it.
Wow. That's pretty good. That's 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean,
well,
it is actually hard to come up with a terrible idea sometimes.
It is. I think that might be it. I don't know. It's so close to a good idea sometimes too, though, right? They balance,
That's
right?
Right.
What's going to hit?
Yeah.
Maybe mine would be. This is on the edge of good idea or terrible pitch. So let's take. You can pick West Coast, East Coast.
Let's go East Coast.
East Coast. Wow, that's gonna be rough. East Coast. So NYC. So we'll go to New York City. It is a reality-based show of urban survivalists that are set inside of Central Park. They're only given. They're giving. You get only what you can carry on your person with no backpack. So your 10 items are all concealed on your person. It could be a Leatherman or whatever, something simple to conceal. There's no fishing, no bow and arrows. There's none of that stuff like in the big. In your job, you have to survive urban homelessness, and you are not allowed to talk to any other human being. So it's dumpster diving. But you can't commit any crimes. That would be
okay.
Pick.
Okay, so that is, I will say categorically, not a bad pitch. That is an awesome idea for a show. I even have a title for the show, Trash Pandas.
Oh my gosh, Trash
You
Pandas.
know,
Yeah.
it writes itself. It is such a good idea. And you have all these rules around, yeah, they can't talk to other people. They can't reveal that they're on a show. You have
Right.
hidden cameras everywhere.
You could panhandle, just have a handout,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
bomb, dirty yourself up, and then go purchase things legally.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be.
And
you
how many days? And you do it just before winter, you know?
can last the longest.
Yeah.
Or you could do it, you could do 5 that have to do 50 days in homelessness.
Yeah.
I think you might realize that some might stay. It's a free world out there. It's tough. I had the pleasure of meeting friends from the show that were hobos for a long time.
Oh,
They
wow.
they ran the trains in the US,
Wow.
and they just jumped trains before the cell phone was a thing, and you could jump trains and travel all across the country, and they just pick up odd jobs in the city, completely homeless. Amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that. See, I don't know. It could be horrible because it's New York, and it would really show New York's dark side. It wouldn't show
Yeah.
with glamour and all the TV shows of how great it is to be in New York. It would show the dark side.
And I
So,
think that's what would be the draw for it. Yeah, because if you had it on the other coast, the weather would be better over the other side as well. We don't, you don't want that. You want it to be a trial and
yeah.
yeah. Oh, I love it. So, okay, all right, alone producer people.
All right, that was not a bad pitch.
There's the idea. Nate and I want rights of some sort when you produce Trash Pandas.
It's out there now. It's out
Yeah.
there. It's out there.
I love it. All right. Well, that was the worst pitch. I'm still thinking about Trash Pandas. There's got to be a way to make that show. It's a fantastic idea. All right. Let's move on to the rapid fire question round. So the questions are rapid, but you can take as long as you need to answer them. You have one choice. You have to choose Star Wars or Star Trek.
Star Wars.
No hesitation, ladies and gentlemen. Well, excellent choice. You are, of course, wrong, but that's okay. All right, so moving on to the next.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Again, as I say quite often, yes, I do love them both, but I would lean more towards the Trek.
You gotta have a winner.
Yeah. All right, so in the future, all ink is removed from human bodies, and it is mandated that every single person must get a unique tattoo. What is that tattoo that you get, and where do you get it on your person?
Oh, so all my current tattoos are gone, right?
Yep, and you get one.
And then I get one tattoo.
But it can be as big and as complex as you like, and you can get it anywhere.
That's a tough one. I like tattoos. I don't know. I think there's so much depth to what I would do. I don't know. I think that I would probably do a tree of life in the center of my back.
Right.
That's probably what I'd do.
And I'm imagining it would cover most of the back then.
Most of the back, yeah.
Yeah. If you're going to do it right.
Go big.
Right, tree of life.
I don't need to see it. I just need to feel it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, with a large tree of life like that, I dare say you'll feel it.
I'll feel it.
Yeah. All right. So which of your heroes or people that you look up to would you most fear to meet in person or be a little bit apprehensive about meeting in person?
Like nervous, like fanboy, like excited, or just like
or worried that I love their work, but I don't ever want to meet them, or I fear it would go badly because of something I would say or they would say.
Yeah. Here's a little insight, I guess, from me personally. So I grew up without a father, and I had male role models that were garbage. So I built a mentality that I don't I don't seek people to emulate my life like. So I'm impressed by certain people, but I can compartmentalize that area of their life that I'm impressed with. Like I don't need to believe what they believe politically or morally or anything like that. But if I think they're talented actor, musician, or philosophy, I think that um like that's where I stand. I think I'm more geared in the mind than I am in the physical. So I think if there was one person that I would love to sit down and have a good session chatting with, and maybe there is a little insecurity that I might say something that doesn't jive, would be Jordan Peterson.
Right.
I don't know if you know Peterson. He's a pretty smart fella.
That's a good,
but
yeah, it's a good choice.
But I have crushes. I don't know. I mean, I have dudes that I have crushes on that I like, a bromance that I would love to meet, but actors that I think are just cool dudes. But yeah, I think the challenge for me probably be a good sit down with Jordan Peterson would be fun.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll email him after this and we'll see if we can make it happen. All right, here we go. So what's one of the hardest fictional deaths you've had to deal with? Like either film, books, TV, something that really sort of struck a chord with you. It can even be a commercial if it goes that way.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's some good struggles. So I kind of think of the depth of the character. And I could nerd out on a couple shows. But there's two that come to mind initially, and of course they're just gigantic theatrical productions. One being the Harry Potter series, when Dumbledore eats it, and the background behind it that Snape does it, and the storyline behind that. And I would almost say that Snape's death in front of Harry rivals that. I think that for him to be so vulnerable in that, I think that's classic. And then the other one would be on the other realm of Boromir's death in Lord of the Rings, because of his challenges as a man, and has found his weakness, and then he found his strength in death. And I think that was a tough one because of his character. But to see that struggle for him, that he wants so much for his people, and then, anyways, I don't know. Those are two.
They are fantastic choices and right on song for this podcast. So well done, sir. They are very, very good choices. All right. So now this one might be a little bit different for yourself, knowing that the sort of man that you are, but you have one childhood toy a toy from your childhood to pass on to your kids and future generations. What would that be?
I don't have like I said, I wasn't really loaded with that life. So I think to pass it down.
Or we could change it to skill or advice, a piece of.
I mean, I think the one thing I cherish most about my childhood is the struggle. I know that maybe that comes off as an odd thing for people because they hate their past because it was a struggle, or they look bad upon their childhood if it was a struggle, or it was painful or difficult or neglectful or whatever it was. To me, the lesson that I learned from that is that it's not easy out here. And if you don't lean forward and put up a fight for yourself, then life is ruthless. So you have to cherish every failure and every struggle as a lesson, and be better than that struggle, move past it. So I don't have a toy. I don't have a pass down.
That's all right. We've had books, we've had advice, we've had a bunch of different things for, not everyone has a toy ready to go.
I don't think I have anything left over from my childhood. I don't have any. I don't even have nothing. Yeah. I would have to say advice. Just fucking don't take
advice.
Just
advice is good. Advice is good. Yeah. I mean, there might be a few disappointed faces around the Christmas tree, but that's fine. That's fine. Advice again. He gave us advice. Yeah. Every year it's the same. Yeah. All right. So we come to the ultimate question. You have to invent a new vegetable. What is it and why?
I don't eat vegetables.
You have to invent a new animal to eat. I don't know. Why? Well, there you go. If it's not something you eat, you can invent a vegetable that's anything. So it could be a meaty vegetable.
Anything that's edible, right? Would be I would have to invent a vegetable that replicates itself with no man's intervention, hardy growth, and then can supply one unit of this vegetable is the same nutrient dense fat and protein requirement for the human body as a ribeye, 1 pound ribeye steak. That would be my vegetable. Feed the world the best protein. That would be it. I would invent a vegetable. I don't know what I'd call it. That is meat.
We'll call it the rib onion.
The rib onion. Yeah.
The rib onion.
Layer of fat and protein. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Nate. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the Very Occasional Podcast. We will see you next time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.